Hello, fifth grade. Today's lesson is going to be about factors and multiples. This should be a review from fourth grade, but this is going to be super important to know in fifth grade as well. So we are going to review each of these factors and multiples today, and then you will do some practice for your assignment. But first, let's review. Factors are two numbers that are multiplied together to get a larger number. So when we are trying to find factors for a number, we are going to ask ourselves, what times what equals that number? We're trying to find two numbers that will multiply together to give us the number that we're trying to find. In fourth grade, you might remember that we talked about Factor Ninja, chopping up numbers. So we're taking this big number that they give us and we're going to chop it up into things that can multiply together to equal it. Let's do a couple of practice problems. It says list the factors for 24. So in my mind, I'm trying to think what times what equals 24? Well, 1 and 24 would equal 24 because 1 times 24 is 24. Or 2 and 12, or 8 and 3, or 6 and 4. So all of those numbers are factors of 24, which means they multiply together to equal that. Let's go ahead and try 18. You try to think of some as I go through. 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. Those would be all of the factors for 18. Let's do one last example, which would be for 20, trying to think of two numbers that multiply together to equal 20. 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. Those would be all of the factors for 20. Now let's review multiples. When we are working with multiples, we're taking a number and multiplying it to get bigger numbers. Or the easiest way to remember multiples is that we're just counting up by that number. So if we are trying to find the multiples of 3, we are just counting by threes. 3, 6, 9, 12, and so on. We would just keep going. If you remember back in fourth grade, we talked about multiple monster, here he is, makes numbers bigger. So when we are talking about multiples, we're going to get bigger numbers as we go. Let's try some. The directions say list the first 6 multiples. So they want us to list the first 6 multiples for 7. So we always start by writing down the number they give us, which is 7. And then we're just counting up to get the multiples. So after 7 would come 14, and then 21, then 28, 35, 42. These 3 dots means we could keep going for a really long time. We could keep counting by 7s for a long, long time. But we get the idea, so we're just going to list the first 6 today. Let's try 9s. Why don't you try to think of the numbers before I write them down? Always first write down the number they give us, which is 9. And now we're just counting up. The next number would be 18, then 27, then 36, and then 45, and 54. Remember, those 3 dots means that we could keep going for quite a while. One last example. Again, you try to think of them before I write them down. First, we have to write down the 4 because that's what we're counting by. And the multiples of 4 would then be 8, 12, 16, 20, oops, broke my pencil lead, and 24. Those 3 dots means that we could keep going. So just for a quick review, factors, we're going to ask ourselves what times what gives us that number. So if they give us the number 24, we are thinking what times what equals 24? And we're going to list all of the ones that we can think of. Multiples means that we are multiplying that number to get bigger numbers, or we're just counting up. It would be the same thing. So if they're wanting the multiples for 7, we are just counting up by 7 to get bigger numbers.